Hello, welcome to the Minnesota State IT Center of Excellence Career Readiness Podcast. My name is Chad Eckes. I'm the current manager of Career Readiness Curriculum for the Center and host for today's episode. This podcast is the second episode in a short series focused on the Center's efforts of developing and growing the Career Readiness D2L modules and their associated digital badges. Our focus today is on teaching career readiness skills to technology students, and we have two instructors from Minnesota State institutions here to provide us with their experience and advice. First, from Lake Superior College, we have Vickie McLain, who is a faculty member in the Computer Information Systems Department and also the director for the Center for Cybersecurity, as well as the Gen Cyber Program Director. Hi, Vickie. Thanks for joining us today.
Hi, Chad.
Also, we have Brian Huilman from Minneapolis College, who is a faculty member in the Information Technology Department. Welcome, Brian.
Thanks, Chad. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks to both of you for your time today. So to get our discussion going, could maybe each of you provide a short introduction of yourself and tell our audience about your professional background, as well as what led you to being an IT instructor? Vickie, let's start with you.
Okay, well, I kind of got into teaching and IT by accident. So I started teaching when I was 12. I started teaching horseback riding when one of my teachers at school asked me if I'd teach horseback riding, and then I started teaching horseback riding. And initially, I never wanted to be a teacher because I didn't think they made enough money. But after a while, I didn't think that was as important as having a more rewarding career. And then I initially was a medical technologist for my first career, and I took 10 years off to stay home with my kids. And I volunteered, taught at school, and people at school asked me if I could be their classroom teacher, but I didn't have a teaching license. So then I went back to school and got a teaching license. And while I was going back to school, one of my college professors asked me if I would teach at UMD. So then I started teaching at UMD. And from there, I went to teach at Fond du Lac Tribal and Community College, College of St. Scholastica, and Lake Superior College. And I still teach at Lake Superior and College of St. Scholastica. And I found out that there was a lot of skills related to computers that I didn't even know I had. Like I am a really good problem solver, and there's a lot of problems with computers. So, and it's a pretty highly paid field if you're out in the field and not teaching. So it worked out pretty well.
Great. So you've been up in the northern part of Minnesota for quite some time then, teaching at those institutions. And what was your first IT teaching job? I mean, what course were you teaching, or what did somebody ask you to teach? That was kind of a technology course.
Yeah, educational technology. So I taught technology to teachers. And back then, when I first started in computers, and this kind of dates me right here, but when I first started in computers, if you knew how to use PowerPoint, that made you technologically superior to everyone else. So
yeah, there you go. Yeah, honestly, when I was getting my first job, when I showed somebody how to use Excel and create a pie chart, and they were all, their jaws dropped. They just couldn't believe I knew how to use Excel. What are some of the courses you're teaching now? Probably a little more advanced, I would imagine.
Yeah, so I teach A+ hardware, A+ software, network forensics, and regular security plus for cybersecurity, and then emerging technologies, Unix, and computer support this year.
Okay. And what's the mix between traditionally online versus classroom? Obviously, nowadays everything is online at Minnesota State because of COVID, but traditionally, have you been more online or classroom or both?
Yeah, more online, actually. When I first started at LSC, they were already online, and that was 13 years ago. So I've been teaching online all along, so it's nothing new for me. And there's a lot of different things, but the curriculum has to be the same. But there's other ways to engage students, and that's actually one of the reasons why I like these modules, is that for online students, it's harder to get a sense of their personality. So when I need to make recommendations, about their speaking skills, well, I don't talk to them so often, but they have to record videos for these modules, some of the ones I use.
Yeah.
And I can, say, oh yeah, he's, funny, and he, is a really good speaker, or, I can name something else, some little details that I couldn't name if I didn't have these extra communication modules.
Great. I'm glad those modules have been helpful. Okay, well, let's hear from you, Brian. Again, same question as Vickie. Just introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about your professional background and what led you to being an instructor in IT.
Yeah, so I started life as an electrical computer engineer, focusing on the digital electronic side, the computer engineering side of that. And that led me into IT career in higher education, but specifically working for research and high performance computing. So I started off building and administering supercomputing systems, and then over time, of course, job roles evolve and promotions happen, and I was a director at Louisiana State University's High Performance Computing Center. And then I was recruited up here to the University of Minnesota, and I was a director at their Supercomputing Institute for quite a while. And that was about a 20-year career. My oldest child had some health issues, and so I actually stepped back from that role for about 3-4 years to kind of watch that health situation and make sure things were going fine. And that's a lifetime in IT, and it's a double lifetime in a specialty field like high performance computing and research computing. So I started to work with a career coach to think about an encore career of sorts. And what kept bubbling up was teaching and the outreach I would do as a director and all the different talks that I would give to visiting organizations and trying to explain what supercomputers actually do and what research computing is all about. And so, as luck would have it, there was an opening at Minneapolis College, and I applied, and I've now been teaching for about 3 years. Of course, initially I was teaching a lot of the introductory courses, but over time I have taught a huge range. So the Python class for our introductory software developers, the Java class for our advanced software people. I also do the CompTIA A+ PC hardware. I teach the Linux operating system. I teach forensics and a range of things in between.
Wonderful. Yeah, thanks for that. And again, are your courses, have they been predominantly classroom or online or a mix? What's been your experience?
Yeah. So I teach anywhere from like 5 to 8 different sections of courses each semester, and often 1, sometimes 2 of those are online. It has, of course, traditionally been some of the more introductory courses that are more easily moved to an online format. So I do have some experience doing some online, and this current semester, the course in which I'm using the modules we're going to be talking about, I had one traditionally face-to-face section and 1 online section that, of course, has changed in the area of COVID. But yeah, most of my class work, my class time has been face-to-face, I'd say.
Okay, great. Well, before we dive into more around the career readiness curriculum and your experience teaching those types of skills and with these newer modules, can you each give us a little background on, your students? And maybe it's hard to nail that down because you teach so many different courses. It sounds like, Vickie, you're online more, but, is it a pretty diverse range of backgrounds your students come from? I'm just kind of curious, can you, help us with that a little bit? Because that, I think, gives context to, the talk around career readiness and which students need those skills. So maybe, Brian, give us an idea of kind of your student backgrounds, if you could.
Yeah, sure. So I see a very wide range. I literally had one face-to-face class where I had PSEO students still in high school, I had the kind of traditional student that had just graduated the previous semester from high school. And I had a huge range of ages in between, people just getting out of service for the military, people just getting out of prison, all the way up to I had a 67-year-old grandfather who had just sold a business and decided that he wanted to learn something about IT.
Sure.
I see a lot of international students, of course, in the classroom. And I see a lot of students who are coming back to college for the second, third, possibly fourth time. They are looking for a major career change. I see a lot of students coming out of the food service industries, right? I'm here in the Twin Cities area, and I think a lot of people that work in that industry eventually kind of hit that burnout period, and they're like, no more. I need something better. I need something where I have a well-paying job with regular hours. So.
Yep. Yeah. How about you, Vickie? Similar, different?
Yeah, he hit on some of the really important groups that we see a lot. And then the other thing is, and you probably both guessed from our backgrounds, I was a system administrator for 14 years too, but there's a lot of people that come from other backgrounds and go into IT. Most of the people I know didn't just start in IT, they came from someplace else. And that actually can be a big advantage if you've been into other areas, because all of IT and cybersecurity especially has to protect certain things, and it will help if you know actually what you're going to protect. So our students this year, we had more 18-year-olds than usual. For a while we had very few people fresh out of college. The majority of our students were older, and like he said, they'd already been to some other college a couple times. They left for various reasons. And we had one group, we had so many people with 1-year-old children. One year I said we were going to start a play group because there was so many. I think people get to a certain point in their life and they just think, I don't like my job. I don't want to be stuck in it forever. Now I have this family, I need something better that they can rely on. And of course, IT jobs are pretty highly paid, especially if you go into cybersecurity. The other group that you didn't mention, and like I said, we had most of the other groups, but we actually, was it last year? We had about a third of our students already had bachelor's degrees. So we have a lot of students who have and I always ask them what their bachelor degree is in, because I don't want my kids to go into that. But I mean, there are a lot of them in things that don't translate to a job. Like you get a degree. One of them had a degree in military history. I'm not sure which job that translates to, but none that he could get in our area. So they enroll so they can get a skill that will provide them with a job in the location where they're at, and that's what IT can do for you.
Great. That's great background, I think, for me to understand as well as those listening, because I think it's different at various institutions around Minnesota State. We have such a large and diverse population in the state, large diverse population of institutions, and so it's just good to understand those backgrounds for me and the listeners. So when you think about your student populations and the courses you're teaching, obviously they're very technical courses. Some might be more introductory than others. But I think what's on both of your minds, just because I've known you now for a while, is that you're also trying to prepare most, if not all, your students for that IT career, right? So they're getting the technical training, but you want them to be preparing for the career and to make that leap as well. And part of that, I think, in your brains is not just teaching the technical skills, but the non-technical skills, or what we also often call these career readiness skills, whether that's, oral, written communication, leadership, teamwork, things like that. So I'll just throw this out and one of you can jump in and then we can kind of have a discussion around it. But what motivates either of you to teach those skills, even though you're really obligated to teach more of the technical skills in your courses? One of you want to take that?
So with me, it was our advisory board. Every time we talked to the advisory board that was made up of local businesses, and they said students in general that come into their organizations, do not have communication skills, not necessarily from our school, but and they said that the people without communication skills don't last very long, no matter how good their technical skills are. They said it's much easier to teach them technical skills than communication skills. And it was, seemed very ironic to me that we're in information technology, but people have the information, but they can't find a way to share that information. Information isn't very valuable unless you can find a way to share it with someone else. So that's why I thought I needed to do something in my classes that involved better communication skills.
Yeah. And I would agree with that. And I think what I would add is a slight personal story. I think that a lot of my own career success was because I had the ability to communicate what was going on technically in a way that other people could understand if they're not technical. And so I saw the direct benefit of having those abilities and being able to clearly articulate what had happened, what the problem was, how it's going to be solved, or what needs to be done from a technical perspective and why. And not everybody has that IT understanding. As Vickie said, those skills can be learned and or taught on the job, but it's these additional kind of professional level skills of being able to communicate with anybody, to be able to work with anybody. And I think that they're distinguishing skills that they're important for our students to have. And if they can demonstrate them in an interview, if they can demonstrate them even at the beginning with a well-written resume, it sets them apart, and it just gives them that little extra advantage for either getting the initial job or the internship or progressing in their career later on.
Yeah, that's great. I appreciate those answers. What you both mentioned communication. I think inherently in that you also implied teamwork and being able to work with others. What other skills are you emphasizing, or are employers, your advisory board, Vickie, what are the skills they're really looking for or are telling us that they like to see improvement in, or they're seeing deficiencies in with students?
Well, professional emails, and I still have to tell people this in my classes that, even though you use texting language and we all know what the abbreviations mean, you can't send your boss an email that's, LOL, and, it's just not professional. And then the other thing is, and I actually wanted to add this to one of them, and I can never pronounce that right, but memes, whatever those are, some of the students are using those things as a way to communicate, but they're communicating with people that don't see the humor in them. So, they have to understand that, professionally, we still haven't, added that to our professional communication. So there's a lot of things that they do with their friends, which are acceptable, which are not acceptable at work.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think one of the things that I also try and stress in the classes I teach is just being mindful and being aware, and taking that mindfulness or awareness to a point of observing, is what I'm doing what everybody else around me is doing, right? Am I acting in a way that is consistent with the people around me? Am I communicating the way that I think I should be with other people? So just having them stop and think and know themselves, and understanding those strengths and weaknesses, and then moving forward from there, right? Either leveraging the strengths or working on those areas they got to continue working on. So.
And I can give an example for the teamwork one that it actually happens a lot. I have students working on a group project, and one of them emailed me and said, I sent out communication to people in my group, or, one person isn't doing any work. Well, I said in real life, there are actually people that don't seem to be, doing their share of the work. So I said, you're going to have to find out, come up with a method to deal with that in a professional way. And in my classes, they have peer reviews where if they didn't do any work, it's part of their grade. So the other person on their team won't get a good grade. But in real life, it's just something that a lot of people didn't think was going to happen. They thought, I'm going to go out in the work world and everyone is going to give 100% to the job and, things are going to be great. But I think they need a little bit of reality too before they head out there.
Yeah,
sure.
I agree.
Yeah. Well, great. We've touched on a little bit about your student population and the need for career readiness. And again, I know you both, and you've both, been real pioneers in bringing some of these skills into your courses. I want to talk a little bit about these career readiness modules that I've been working on and that you've both, agreed to pilot in some of your courses over the last, few months. I guess maybe Brian, when you heard about these career readiness modules, what sort of piqued your interest, or what prompted you to sort of investigate a little bit more?
So they seem to fit almost immediately with one of the introductory courses I teach, and it's literally called Preparing for IT. And honestly, the class is much more about life skills. I use a open educational resource textbook that is literally how to be successful in going to college, because a lot of those topics and skills directly apply into the IT side. So there was already a very natural fit with how I'd already approached things and the professionalism that I was trying to convey initially, defining what IT actually is and what it means to be an IT professional. I talk to my students and call them your emerging IT professionals as often as I can to kind of reinforce that. But another aspect of this was the fact that we have the associated badges, the digital badging capability or the micro-credentialing. So a lot of our classes are set up around teaching a curriculum that will let the students go and do a test to get a certification, an industry-recognized certification. And I thought that this is a perfect way to introduce some of those ideas and concepts of being credentialed or certified, and having them get some initial success, because this is supposed to be a first semester type of course, with earning some of these digital badges or micro-credentials. I thought was another great fit with the approach I was already taking.
Okay. Yeah. Well, thanks for that. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. What about you, Vickie? I know the first time I spoke with you was probably almost 2 years ago now. And, we were just conceiving of the idea for these modules, and you said, well, I would be happy to give them a try. But what kind of prompted you to give them a try, and how has your experience been, and how is it maybe different from Brian's course, where he's got a lot of, like you said, kind of an intro course for the people just getting into IT?
Yeah, mine are in my regular courses. So I have one in computer support, which actually in computer support, there's a lot of communication in that already. And out of all my classes that I teach, students get the worst grades in that because of their lack of good communication skills. So, I said they need more communication skills, even though they sometimes try to resist, because the students, when they went out into the industry, they said, oh, it's really easy work in here because all we do all day is do your homework. And most of the homework was actually from computer support, where they had to do an analysis of software to, pick the best type of software to use for the company, or, they had to write an RFP, request for proposal. So there was a lot more writing than they thought there was going to be when they got out, and obviously a lot more meetings than they thought there was going to be, where they had to have good communication skills. So I put them in the classes. One of the biggest things for me, though, is that you have to make the students realize how important this is for their career. Because especially like network forensics, they said, why are we learning teamwork in network forensics? What does teamwork have to do with network forensics? And I said, well, when you get out in the real world in general, people work on teams. I work with people all over the United States in teams, and it's not that difficult to do, and you have to be prepared to work with people from all over the United States and in anything, basically in IT. So after they realized more the importance to their job, they bought into it more. There's still some people that, you know, are not as motivated, but I think the majority now realize how important it is.
That's great. And I'm sure that has a lot to do with the fact that you are stressing that for them. And whether it's the first time they've heard it or the 100th time, it's maybe sinking in. And the fact that both of you are teaching these skills thoughtfully and with purpose, I think that will certainly make a lasting impression on those students.
Yeah, and I have
With
a funny thing that goes along with that. One of the modules has to do with somebody stealing your lunch and how you react to that. So one of my graduates said he got out and he said like the second week he was working there, someone stole his lunch, but he was prepared to how to handle that.
Oh,
That's funny.
so yeah, that's one of the exercises where I believe the student is asked to be they're put in a tough situation and they're asked to record a video of them
Yeah.
approaching that person and resolving the conflict. Is that one of those exercises? Is that
Right.
kind of what it
Yeah.
is?
So,
Yeah.
yeah. How would you handle it if you know somebody had stolen
Yeah.
your lunch, and what would you say to the other person?
Yeah.
hmm
Now I know, Brian, you're just now, I think, kicking off these modules in your
Right.
1005 course, and I know you've looked through them. But so
hmm
maybe you can answer this after Vickie. But I mean, Vickie, I wanted to ask if there were particular exercises or assignments that have stood out that students have after the fact sort of come to you and said, yeah, that was really useful, or I really appreciated that assignment, or that you had us do that.
So you want me to answer first or Brian?
Yeah, I think you, because Brian is just kicking off the
Oh,
modules,
okay.
so I don't think his students have gone through too many of the exercises.
So there was a videos where you had to persuade your boss to do something else that they weren't in favor of, or the team that you were working on. They mentioned that one was valuable for the people that are now out in the working world, because there's always going to be a lot of ideas that you have that maybe no one else has, and maybe they're good ideas, but you have to find a way to persuade the other people without saying anything that's going to get you fired. So that was one of them. And then the other one, writing professional emails.
Okay.
There's a lot of email, obviously, in IT. So writing professional emails is a good skill for any of them to have.
Right. Now, Brian, again, your students, your courses are just kicking them off, but as you reviewed the modules and maybe you made some changes in them to be more particular for your student body or not, but was there anything in particular that you're kind of excited to have them go through because you feel it's particularly applicable to your students in that course?
Yeah. So my students last week were doing their 360-degree assessments. And I think that fits perfectly because of my emphasis on the self-awareness, right? Being mindful, knowing how you learn best, knowing what it's going to take for you to fully understand or to communicate a particular idea so that you can put in the time or know where you need to improve yourself to make things better. So having them go through a 360 assessment with peers or employers, I know some of my students even use some family members, which isn't always the best for an assessment, but I'm already seeing their assignments being turned in about their own self-assessment versus what they're seeing from other people. And it's been eye-opening for them. And that's a good thing for me, right? It's a chance for them to see how others perceive them in the world and to see how their own thoughts about themselves might cloud or mask some of their behaviors. So and now they're jumping into, they're just starting to do the oral and written communication module right now. And I think that's going to be a good one. This is, again, we're an urban institution and we have a lot of international students. And I think that any way that they can improve their language skills, their writing skills, is going to be extremely beneficial for them. So
Great. So then quickly back to you, Brian. Just again, for faculty who are listening who haven't yet heard of or maybe adopted the modules, but they're thinking about taking a look. How did you set things up in your course? Was it pretty clear? And it sounds, again, your course is much more geared towards, again, being IT career ready. But how do you set the stage at the beginning of the course, in the syllabus, or just, how do you get students prepared for, the fact that they're going to be learning and practicing these skills in your course? I mean, do you have any particular tricks or, methods you use to make sure they're ready for this?
Yeah, so I don't know if there's so much tricks, but I did have a note here in prep for this that I think it's important for other faculty to repeatedly bring up the fact that they're going to be going through these modules that might be a little bit different than other things that they're going to encounter in that particular course. And constantly emphasizing the fact that we're covering these things because these are skills you're going to need. Finding the way to tie it into a particular topic or subject is obviously important. Making it relevant to the students is always important. Having it try and find some personal connection with them, obviously. And I think another, piece of advice or word of wisdom I might share about these is even though I'm teaching an introductory course that is actually trying to emphasize all of these things that the modules are providing, I still had some initial thoughts of, I don't know if it's going to completely fit, right? The way the module is set up right now might not quite be in line with what I was going to be doing at certain points in the semester. Check that at the door, right? Get that, just the whole, it might not fit. Take that out, go in and look at the content. And again, this is directed at other faculty. Take a look at that content, and I am almost positive you're going to be able to see how you're going to be able to tie what you're actually teaching in whatever course you're going to use these modules in. You're going to be able to tie it directly into all these things because they're all great base level professional skills that they're definitely going to benefit your students. So, there's going to be a little bit of work on the learning management side to adjust the assignments or to figure out the grades and which aspects of the modules that are pre-set up you're going to keep. But they're well written. They're easy to follow in the learning management system. And it was kind of a trivial exercise of sorts for me to just kind of go through and make modifications and shift things around. Worked out pretty well.
Well, good. Yeah, and I'm certainly super interested to hear how your students continue down the path with first the oral and written communications module and the others. So that's great. I appreciate those comments. So Vickie, to you, similar question, but really I think just to put a point on it, because Brian was already talking about things he'd recommend other faculty think about or do. What are one or two things you'd recommend that faculty do to incorporate these career readiness skills into their courses?
Yeah, like Brian already mentioned, you have to stress how relevant it is to what they're going to be doing. And in fact, I tell my students that the communication piece is more relevant than anything else they're doing. But like in network forensics, I have a team exercise where they are working in groups anyway, and I put this right before that so that it will help them when it comes time for the group work. They already have been working with this team as part of their module, and it makes the whole process a lot smoother. And then the other thing is to make sure you take time to look at them ahead of time, because you can customize them somewhat to what you're teaching, but it takes a little bit of time before you start to make the changes.
Okay. So what I heard from both of you is just, again, consistent messaging throughout the semester about the importance of the skills that, again, in the course, these are being introduced, they're being taught, there's exercises, and that students are expected to work through them, and that it's good for them. But then also that, for faculty prior to the semester even starting, that, there's a bit of a learning period to understand what's in the modules, get used to them. We feel, of course, at the Center of Excellence that the modules are, ready for prime time and ready to be put into courses or even used as a co-curricular type of opportunity for students. And it's great that both of you have spent time with us, giving us feedback to make them better, and then you're utilizing them in your courses. And hopefully at the end of this semester, we'll have some good feedback from students as well on what they learned and how they feel they'll benefit from them. Not just the modules, but then also the badges as well, which we didn't talk about much today, but I think that'll be a topic for another conversation. So I think in the interest of time, we're going to wrap things up here. Unless there's any one last comment either of you want to make to your faculty colleagues out there listening, any last comments or thoughts before we sign off?
I'd just say that I'd like to thank you, Chad, for your work in this, helping pull together the grant and getting us involved. I think the modules are definitely going to benefit my students, and I'd love to see other faculty throughout the state adopt them. I think that they're going to be very beneficial.
Well, thank you for that. You're very welcome. I'm glad it's going well.
And I would agree with him on everything. These have been really helpful to all the students. In fact, I think I told you before, I'm on now part of a national grant where we might use these things nationally for IT if the grant is approved. And the benefits to students are not easy to measure because it takes a while, but I have had some that have graduated and have said they've been really valuable because they've been in scenarios like when someone steals your lunch, or, when you have to persuade, someone to change, and because you have a better idea, just things like that, just like anything else, when you practice these skills, then it gets a lot easier to be successful using them. So.
Indeed. Yep. I wholeheartedly believe that. And we're just really delighted to see the utilization and the hopefully future success of the modules and the badges. So thanks to both of you for your time today and for giving us your insights and advice. That does it for this episode of the Career Readiness Podcast. Thank you everyone for listening and for supporting the Center's mission, which is to engage industry, inspire students, and enhance IT education to build a more robust technology workforce in Minnesota. Thank you.